Hello and welcome to session number 25 of NestGen 22, Future of Public Safety RPAS Automation and BVLOS Ops. Autonomous drones have proved vital for large-scale emergency, search and rescue, and law enforcement operations. Drones for Good has grown into a global movement. Public safety RPAS, or remote pilot assisted systems, have been used to collect meteorological data, to fight fires, plant trees, monitor ocean health, and solve several other practical problems. During the COVID-19 pandemic, they've also been used to deliver test kits and vaccines rapidly without human contact. As their potential increases, so do BVLOS waivers for emergency response operations. And that's where drone responders come in. A nonprofit program created to unite aerial first responders, emergency managers, and search and rescue specialists under a unified organization to help learn, train, and test with one another, with the ultimate objective of maximizing drone operations for public safety. The Drone Responders Board of Advisors is composed of many of the best and brightest minds engaged in UAS operations and program management for public safety. Their job is to help ensure that drone responders serve the greater good as the premier source for public safety UAS research and knowledge. Chief Charles L. Werner, our speaker for today, is the director and founder of Drone Responders and has worked in public safety for almost half a century, 47 years. He started his career as a firefighter and emergency medical technician with the Charlottesville VA Fire Department for 37 years, serving the last 10 years as fire chief. He also served 2 years as a reserve deputy with the Albemarle County Sheriff's Office. Following retirement, Chief Werner served for 2 years as senior advisor and deputy state coordinator for the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. He has worked on numerous local, state, and national leadership roles on various public safety topics and is an internationally renowned speaker. He is an FAA certified remote pilot and a contributing editor for Firehouse Magazine, Urgent Communications, Domestic Preparedness Magazine, Crisis Response Journal, and other publications with over 200 nationally published articles. We are so honored to have you with us today, Chief Werner. The session is all yours. Stop sharing my screen now.
All right, listen, thanks very much for the opportunity to be here with NestGen and to share this information. We're talking about the future of automation and beyond visual line of sight operations, but we thought it was important to talk about how are public safety agencies using drones today first to let people know, because a lot of people don't know how widely public safety is using drones. So in firefighting, you can see here, for example, two different examples of firefighting. One on the left is the thermal image view, which gives the indication of where a fire is. And in this case, you can see that the roof is partially gone by the heat signature. On the right, you can see where an overwatch identifies a fire from flying brands that started on an exposure across the street that would otherwise have gone undetected. We also have the camera view, the visual optics versus thermal image view. And what we've seen is this gives us a great deal more effectiveness of applying water onto the fire directly as opposed to missing the target altogether because of being blocked by smoke. The Notre Dame fire in France was another great example of drones flying. They were able to determine the best place to make the attack, and then they put in the colossal robot master stream to actually stop the fire spreading to the rest of the cathedral. In traffic accidents and hazmat situations, we can see a lot more from above than we can see from the ground. We're able to determine how many more resources are needed to accomplish the mitigation of the incident at hand. And then we're seeing the combining of GIS and digital imagery. Here you can see an example of the campfire where total communities were destroyed. And now we're able to take that information, create panoramic views, put it onto a map so that people can click on it and see what the situation of their community and their specific home is. And disasters, we're seeing everything from tornadoes to floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, and even, in this case, volcanic eruptions or emissions like we saw in Hawaii. These give us a very quick look at how bad is bad, oftentimes being able to get up and fly quicker than piloted aircraft. It's also used for locating lost persons. This is a great example in the UK, and you can see here with the thermal imagery, they've identified the location of the lost person and are able to give coordinates to rescuers. You can't see the rescuers, they're off slightly to the left of the thermal screen, but you can see that before they get to the person who's lost, There's also bodies of water that are between rescuers, and they're able to provide that information. And this is a total dark environment, so it changes the dynamics of safety. So in PIX4D, we've seen PIX4D React, which, by the way, is free to public safety agencies out there that are working in the field. But we're also able to see it used for traffic crash reconstruction, which reduces it to 1/3 of the time and reduces secondary accidents because it's getting the roads freed up more quickly. And here we're seeing hazmat operations. We can see everything from a rural train derailment, which shows us right off the bat how many train cars are involved. And we can look in this case and see that there are no hazardous material cars involved, and there's no contamination of the waterway. That really helps us move more quickly. In the bottom, you can see where they were using it for radiation detection and able to determine what areas were safe to go into at a later time. On the right, you can see hazmat operations, and the thermal imaging can be used to see the amount of the liquid left in a container. It can also tell us some heat temperatures and variations if there's an application of fire to that. And we can also monitor things from remote locations. Use cases, COVID-19 is one. We saw it was used for a lot of different situations. I'm not going to go into any detail here because some were good, some were not so good. Here's the examples of identifying dispersed crowds, and this came across as being a little kind of sci-fi, where they were using it with speakers and it wasn't clear. Spray disinfectant to disinfect large areas, monitor and inform homeless, which was done out in California, to monitor temperatures of people and coughing types of situations, and then to monitor, detect COVID-19 signs. And again, some people felt this was a little far-reaching as far as privacy goes. And then in the zip line, over 30,000 medical deliveries in Africa. I think it's actually now over 100,000. And as you can see, there's many ways they're being used by public safety. And the reason is that they enhance responder safety, they improve operational effectiveness, and they provide increased situational awareness. So today, there are over 50 public safety humanitarian use cases. And here's just a quick look of these. The fires, as we talked about before, in different views, protests that have taken place, and this was used to monitor, to maintain traffic and pedestrian deconfliction, because oftentimes the protests would go out into traffic. Train derailments with hazmat, the hurricanes in the bottom of your screen in the center, you can see from Puerto Rico, and the earthquake on the right from New Zealand. Tomorrow's autonomy for public safety is really interesting. And for those of you that don't know, the picture that you see here is actually a screenshot from the television cartoon show, The Jetsons, which viewed in September of 1962, and it projected itself that flying cars would be occurring by the year 2062. I think we're really seeing that this is all starting to happen much quicker than 2062, and probably in the next 5 years, we'll start seeing flying taxis, hopefully flying ambulances, and some other resources similar. So let's look at what the autonomy of tomorrow looks like. So one, not only from tomorrow, but today, Chula Vista is launching a Beyond Visual Line of Sight mission in their Drone as a First Responder program. They are able to fly immediately from dispatch and get over the scene in an average response time of 103 seconds. The times that they deferred deployment and avoided dispatch and control unit was 2,414 out of 9,680 responses. And it assisted in 1,132 arrests. This means they're flying over the scene much more quickly, being able to provide information to public safety. And in many cases, from law enforcement perspective, it's also helped to reduce or to lessen the tension that's in place. So the drones that deliver vaccines, Zipline has done a phenomenal job in Africa and is now doing things in the United States and some other countries where they fly from a point of launch to the launch location of remote locations and are able to provide vaccines to underserved communities and countries. So this is really changing the dynamic, which saves lives. All of these drones that we're seeing out there are helping to save lives. And then we're starting to see that we can combine ShotSpotter in conjunction with the drone location. So a drone can be launched automatically to a triangulated location given by ShotSpotter to get over the scene more quickly to determine what is actually happening and provide that information to law enforcement. The goal here is to be able to identify the situational awareness, what is happening in the situation, be able to mitigate that situation, as well as to send emergency medical services if needed. Anti-poaching drones for critical wildfire protection is phenomenal. Being able to go out and fly in areas remote and from some distance away, be able to identify poachers who are killing these wildlife in situations that they could even become extinct. So this is a dramatic change in tools to be able to do anti-poaching. And then we're seeing the ability of aircraft to fly and drop flotation devices to people in drowning situations. So whether you're at the beach or you're in a river, you can drop on the left, you can see a rest tube that when it hits the water, it automatically inflates. And on the right, you can see flotation devices that can be dropped. Now, what's happening is simultaneously, lifeguards are doing what they normally do. So the closest lifeguard will respond by running and swimming to the rescuer, to the person in need of rescue. At the same time, the next station over is launching the drone with the flotation devices. As you can imagine, the drone almost always gets there first, puts the flotation device in the water, which makes it safer for the person, so more likely they're not going to drown, but it also protects the rescue swimmer who's on the way, because a drowning person is a very scary situation, because they're losing their ability to maintain control of themselves. And they can often drown the rescue swimmer if not careful. So then the idea is, what about more than one drone flying? Drone swarms flying out into the air. In this case, drones could be controlled by one person being using artificial intelligence and looking for a lost person, either by the color of clothes or by using thermal imagery or by looking through the trees with LiDAR. So these are the kinds of things in the future that we're going to start seeing, and the ability to cover much larger areas much more quickly, and in some places that are totally inaccessible by being able to get to on foot. And then we're starting to see things where drones will be flying in succession with each other, one after the other, and being able to fly 24 hours to drop either water or a retardant in place to extinguish wildfires, to get them done more quickly. And the idea will also be that these drones can fly, be in persistent flight, to be able to detect early wildfires, to put them out in the very early incipient stages to stop them from becoming large, major wildfires. So then we might have situations where we have high-rise fires and we need to have someone flying to rescue someone on an upper floor. And sometimes they're in between. They can't go down, they can't go up, so they're stuck. In this case, we see here the example of a flying drone with a net. It can fly very close to where the person is. They can jump into it. It can be then flown into a location of safety and let them off. And then, as I mentioned before, the idea of air ambulances and medical responses. So the idea of having artificial intelligence to be able to fly to certain locations and meet a rescuer that's on the scene and provide care, but then get them to the hospital more quickly than traveling by ground. And in some cases, this will be even true in urban communities, because an air ambulance may be able to get faster from the scene than trying to get through traffic in that urban environment and fly directly to the rooftop of a hospital or medical center. On the bottom right, you can see where either it might be a defibrillator and or medications that can be dropped, like Narcan, to opioid patients who need it quickly in the field. So this can be done in short locations or even further locations as we go into the future and have that beyond visual line of sight capabilities. And again, as you can see here, being able to fly persistent flights, the idea here is to be able to fly and be able to identify those fires very quickly, to show where they are. They can also identify the fires that are in existence, the temperatures of those fires, and give some indication of the priority of what needs to be attacked first. So drones may help you move quickly and safely from A to B, from one location to another. Because as we get to beyond visual line of sight and other capabilities, we're going to have the air taxis, but also be able to tell you from the information from drones which way to navigate if you're driving on the ground. So it can give both an air transport capability, but also being direction of the traffic directions that are occurring in and around a community. And this can be especially important during a disaster when roads are being changed in the direction of travel to where all the lanes are going way to exit or escape from a hurricane community and many more. And then we're starting to see smart cities. Smart cities are taking use of drones because they can fly and maintain a persistent flight. And as I mentioned, provide that information that they're looking for. It may be traffic flow. It may be shots that are fired in a community. It may be transportation from one point to another. It may be an air ambulance. So that the list goes on. And as we see this beyond visual line of sight and automation come into play, we're going to see a lot more of this. We're going to see many more remotely piloted aircraft than piloted aircraft by far. And we're starting to see that already, even within visual line of sight operations. So now I'm going to just kind of open this up for questions and answers to see if anybody has any questions.
Great. So we already have a couple questions underway. So yeah, to start off with, how is PIX4D being used in public safety?
So PIX4D is being used to do one, traffic crash reconstruction. That's one, but they're also being used after disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, to do the actual ground mapping. Some of this is even being used in situations where they want to go in and measure the amount of debris that's come. They can determine from that how much debris there is, how much it's going to take to remove that debris, and to monitor the recovery of that.
Right. Another person, I think the same person is asking, isn't rescuing a person with the help of a drone too far-fetched, or is it being practiced in some countries?
Well, the rescue by drone is not being used currently, and we're talking a little bit about the future of thinking what might be happening. And so as we're thinking about automation and we're thinking about artificial intelligence and beyond visual line of sight and detect and avoid technologies, we're going to see this happen. We're going to see it where a drone can fly remotely. We know that drones can fly and do the missions already. We just haven't done any testing. But drones would be able to fly. For example, let's say that you have a wildfire firefighter who's down, that you could fly a drone to that location without a pilot, pick that person up and pull them out and take them to a place of safety. So it's far-fetched at the moment, but it's not that far away.
Right, that's a good answer. I think along those lines, I have another question. How do you think regulations look like for public safety? Because I feel like when it comes to saving lives and also preventing wildfires from spreading further, looking at disaster management, I feel like waivers might be a little easier.
So it depends on the country. The regulations are varying across the countries. In Europe, there's a lot more flexibility for public safety and flights in general. For example, Zipline is successful because they have been able to work in a place that regulations have allowed beyond visual line of sight very early. But for public safety in general, we are able to fly missions easier and to go a little bit further than what we do. Chula Vista is a great example of the Drone as a First Responder program. We're able to do that because we're working with the FAA, addressing the safety cases, and then using the technology.
And you did mention Chula Vista before, and a lot of other people do make Chula Vista quite reputed for having their own drone program and drones as first responders program. How do they do things differently, and why aren't other police departments following suit? Why aren't other places?
So Chula Vista was part of the integration pilot project which kind of gave some experimental opportunities out there to do beyond visual line of sight that others didn't have. What we have done, however, is Drone Responders has created a Drone as a First Responder program working group, which is open to anyone in the world. So anyone who's interested can join. And Drone Responders, you can join for free as well. And we have a resource center online that has over 700 documents. But to your point, is our goal is to share that information with other agencies so they can do that. So we know of at least 5 agencies that are already heading into that program of Drone as a First Responder. So it is, you are going to see it continue to increase, and we're making the information available to help make it go more quickly.
Oh, that's excellent. Okay. So another question around that we have from our social media around something that you said about it's not too far-fetched to look at autonomous drones being able to rescue people, but it's a little far-fetched. How far would you say is swarming, like, communication between drones? Could you talk a little bit about what we need to get there and why we aren't there yet?
Yeah, so I think we're going to see the ability to use swarm videos swarm drones within the next 5 years. And I think it'll be sooner than that. I think it'll actually be more like 3. What we do know is that if you look at the drones that are used for in place of fireworks, so the drone displays, they're an example of swarms being flown by one controller to get that done. So the idea then is to take that same idea now and put it into the ability to fly. But what's keeping us held back some is the detect and avoid technology necessary to detect other aircraft and stay away from it. So it's the detect and avoid technology that's kind of the holy grail of all this. When that detect and avoid technology is in place where we can feel comfortable that it can avoid both remotely piloted and piloted aircraft, that's when we're going to see all of this literally take off.
Okay, understood. So do you see docking stations being useful in public safety? Will they be helpful in terms of quicker drone adoption, or do you think it would just be a luxury?
When you say docking stations, what do you mean?
So a box in which the drone can land and charge, cool itself down before it takes off on another flight or for another emergency.
Yes, that's actually already being done. So there is Drone in a Box. There is Percepto that's doing something similar to that. And then I know that there's a company called First Eyes in Texas that now has created a port, drone port that can actually, it's climate controlled. It's got a weather station outside. They'll actually do some evaluations to determine whether the weather is acceptable to take off. And then it has a universal charging thing that it can land in the box, close up, and then start charging its event. So yes, I could see that you could have multiple of these types of stations. Let's say, for example, when you're flying a utility route, you might have these stationed every couple miles so that it can fly the mission for a couple miles beyond visual line of sight, land, charge, and then take off and go to the next one. And they can be interconnected through either through 5G or through satellite or through a mesh network.
Okay. And when you speak of utility, you speak of inspections, right? But in public safety specifically, how do you see it being used?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the same thing as Drone as a First Responder, that it can take off and go to the mission, and then when it comes back, it can land and automatically start doing its charging. So it's restoring itself for operation without having to have human contact. So I think that's where it's going to have the big difference. But it could also be that it's flying missions around correctional facilities and other things like that, where you want to maintain perimeter control. And again, being able to take off and land removes that logistics that you don't have to deal with.
Right, of course. All right. So I suppose we'll wait for a few more minutes to see if we have any questions coming in. Oh, yes, we have one question. What is the future of AI-based drones in public safety?
Air-based
I think
drone?
we put AI, artificial intelligence-based drones. You covered a little bit about that. Maybe for
so I think the artificial intelligence drones are going to do a couple different things. Number one, they're going to be able to take certain anomalies. And we know that there's a university in Germany that we talked to that is doing kind of speaker arrays that can actually take information in from sound that it can hear from different types of disasters that they've monitored. So say, for example, you're flying over a collapse situation in an earthquake. They've now recorded screams, crying, yelling, banging on pipes, so that when any of these sounds are heard, it picks it up. The AI then says, "Hey, this looks like it could be a possibility." It narrows the array. The other thing it can be done for is, I know that working with NASA, they're working with some artificial intelligence to be able to go to fly into areas drone on their own to determine, looking from previous satellite imagery, to know which areas need to be mapped, because now it can see the previous areas undamaged, now the new damages with the artificial intelligence, and start doing its video without human interaction. So that's going to be kind of interesting. And then we're seeing search capabilities in large desert areas where the artificial intelligence can take in colors of a person's clothing, and or now they're able to do even certain types of material that they can identify as they're flying, looking for a person that may be wearing a certain type of clothing or a certain color clothing.
Okay, interesting. All right, so we'll just wait for a bit to see if we're getting any more questions. Until then, if you have anything more to share, if you have a video that you'd like to show us, that would be a great time.
Yeah, and I would just say that the slides that I showed, I could have probably had another hour, and I also have a video that's actually compiled video of actual drone public safety missions. If anybody would like a link to that, they can send me an email at charles@droneresponders.org, and I'll make it available, as well as the PowerPoint, any kind of PowerPoint presentations people may be looking to help sell their case, because sometimes you got to sell people in your community why drones are important. But I'm glad to provide that video for anybody who'd like it, and as well as to you if you want to share it.
Great. I am just putting that down on the chat box so people can reach out to you. We're just waiting for a couple of minutes to see if we're getting any questions. Otherwise, this session will come to an early end, of course. All right. Do you have any closing thoughts for the people who have attended?
Well, my closing thoughts are that drones are going to make a huge difference in our communities in so many different ways: public safety, agriculture, media, you name it. It's being used in almost every industry now. But I would say that anybody who needs additional information, go to droneresponders.org, join, it's free. We have a resource center with over 700 documents and a global public safety drone directory. And people are able to take advantage of all those things to learn what's already been happening, because our goal is to advance the technology by sharing information with everybody.
Great. That was truly an excellent session. And your work is a testament to the amazing big picture visionary work that the drone community continues to engage in. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today and share your insights and your experience, your vast experience.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Great. Yes.
Good luck with the rest of the Nest Gen.
Thank you so much. Yeah.